What's good, Lady Boss Nation? I hope everyone's doing well today. So, I wanted to go ahead and talk about the recent poll that I did under the community portion of my channel. And it is described as what is the most embarrassing choke loss in Lady Vols basketball history. And I gave four options, clear-cut options. I really honed in on the postseason. I couldn't think of any regular season scenario that could have affected how things would have ended ultimately in the postseason for Tennessee. Because, of course, regular season, postseason are two different things in a lot of people's minds, at least when it comes down to iconic programs like Tennessee. So, let's talk about each one. Feel free to vote for it if you know the scenarios already. But if you need a little assistance, then hey, I'm here to talk about it a little bit. And if there's no option for any of the four that you have in mind, drop it in the comments. Share what you got to say about it. But yeah, I feel like all four of these scenarios that happened to Tennessee were definitely some of probably the most well-known embarrassments that the Lady Vols has ever witnessed and encountered. Especially if you are a Lady Vols fan. I mean, they just stick out. But let's hop right into it. So 1990, we have Tennessee, the defending national champions. And the tables are going to run through Tennessee for a lot of reasons. One, they're the defending national champions. They've won 2 out of 3 national titles. And this time, the Final Four was going to be in Knoxville. And unfortunately for Tennessee, they ended up losing to Dawn Staley and the Lady Cavaliers of Virginia, and in that Elite Eight game. And hey, they did a great job on Tennessee that night, and Tennessee went home. But Tennessee still got to host. They just had to be service workers for that Final Four weekend. And I'm talking about they were serving hot dogs, soda, popcorn, nachos to the fans Final Four weekend. Now, you can do that nowadays in this modern day and age of social media, because there will be think pieces and people calling for folk heads and about how just disrespectful that is and how much they're kids and all that. But man, Pat Summitt was highly upset with her Lady Vols, and she put a nice little life lesson on them to the point where they learned it. And in '91, they went back to the Final Four and they ended up winning it. But that was definitely an embarrassment for Tennessee at the time, because again, you were the defending national champions, but you could not host in your home state, Thompson Bowling. It would have just been so electric, and you failed to deliver. So that's 1990. Then we get, of course, to the obvious one, 1999. It's probably the most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss in Lady Vols history, in my opinion, because Tennessee, once again, was running the tables. Even though Purdue was having a relatively good season and they were in the contender conversation, they had beaten Tennessee early in the season. Until you beat Tennessee, this national championship, the fourth one, was theirs for the taking. So we get to the Elite Eight game, and they are up against Duke. And Duke comes in not fearing Tennessee. Straight out of the gate, Duke is like, no, we're not going to lay down for you all. We're going to give y'all a game. And so if you have to compare this game in conjunction with the one from the year prior when Tennessee played North Carolina in the Elite Eight, there was so much fire that was missing in this particular game for Tennessee. Like, you saw it. Like, it just seemed like that they were not ready, or their mind was already there at the Final Four, and they just completely did not wake up for Duke. And Duke just handed it to them and really just schooled them on the court. Michelle Van Gort probably had her best game all season. She schooled Michelle Snow a great deal. And the sad part of it comes in where, being that this is the fourth year of Holtzclaw, as well as Jolly, who, of course, is Kelly Harper, Shamika Holtzclaw comes up really small in that game. She ends up leaving the game with only 8 points to her name. And mind you, Shamika Holtzclaw is viewed as one of the best players in basketball during that time period, especially in the women's game. You knew she was going to be the number one draft pick of the WNBA draft. Definitely was going to be an Olympian. I mean, she was just an amazing player. But that night, she just came up so small. And when she went to the bench for the final time and she hugged Pat Summitt, as if like she was probably the greatest failure or disappointment, it just was so... It was hard. I even had a little tear in my eye. I was only a mere teenager when it happened. But my gosh, just seeing that was like, oh man. Like, it was just so hard to take. But that is definitely one of the most heartbreaking ones, because again, it ended the dynasty, and they were kept from winning the fourth consecutive national championship. So, yeah. Then, and you know what? I'm going to say 2005. I'm going to say that. So let's put a pin on 2005's Final Four. Let's hop to 2009. So, 2008-2009 season of the Lady Vols, this was a relatively young Tennessee team, okay? You graduated Candace Parker, Shannon Bobbitt, Alexis Hornbuckle, and others. Again, this was a year that you had to defend your national championship, but if you watched that whole entire season like I did, y'all, they were just not a really good team. The youth of them came into play in a lot of scenarios, and they definitely, I don't know, there was probably some chemistry issues there. I remember reading something not too long ago on that team, and they, and Pat Summitt had said something along the lines like that team was troubled. Now, I don't know if she meant troubled as in off the court, or what was going on in terms of like just the team in general. But you could definitely see that there were chemistry issues, and the team was just very young. I mean, yes, you returned Alex Fuller and Vicky Ball, but again, you really were lacking shooting punch. Fiery players and emotional leaders and shooters. It was just, you were missing a lot of things. So Tennessee goes into that game 21-10, 5th seed, and they play Ball State. And Ball State is a 12th seed. They're 25-7. And Ball State comes out, and just like Duke about a decade before them, does not fear the jersey. They come out, they're shooting well, they're playing defense. Uh, they're really letting it be known that no, you might be Tennessee, but you're not going to be the better Tennessee tonight. And they sent Tennessee home packing on that very first weekend and first round exit. And if you looked at a lot of that game and you saw Pat Summitt on the sideline, you could see how like that game was just so maddening to her. She was not pleased at all. Regardless of what they were lacking, she was not pleased with how that team performed in that game. And rightfully so. Because, again, it ends up being one of your most embarrassing losses of the NCAA tournament. So now let's circle back around to 2005 Final Four. So that season, Tennessee has, I think, the number one recruiting class. Candace Parker, Alexis Hornbuckle, that crew. You're returning a lot of upperclassmen with Zolman and Eli. And you have the biggest chip on your shoulder as Tennessee. There is already talks from people within basketball allure in your state and outside of your state asking, can Pat Summitt win the big one again? You know, she done been to all these Final Fours. Can she finally win the big one? And especially now with UConn not having Diana Taurasi. Diana Taurasi is now in the WNBA. She's graduated along with some of her other fellow, players that she played with at UConn. The road is clear, not just for Tennessee, but for a lot of teams, but specifically for Tennessee. And you come up in here and 16 minutes into the second half, you're literally up 45-25 against Michigan State. Now, mind you, Michigan State is no scrub. They were a 1 seed in that tournament. They were 32-2 coming in. They were no scrub. What it ultimately came down to for Tennessee in that game and why they ultimately lost it, they did not play defense. Defense came back and bit them right where it should have. It was as if that team just stopped playing defense. I mean, you were up by a lot, but Pat Summitt will preach all day, every day, that if you want to win these games in the postseason, you got to play defense and rebound. And those were two things that we failed to do, along with doing little tacky, chippy fouls in moments of the game in the second half that helped Michigan State crawl right back into it and chip away and chip away and chip away. And ultimately, Michigan State found their footing, and they put their pedal to the metal, and they never let up off of Tennessee. And that was such a abysmally choke loss to Tennessee, because I'll say it again, you did not have to deal with UConn any longer at that point. You are in one of the longest droughts in your history of not winning a national championship. There is people and those that talk about sports within that are questioning if Pat Summitt can win another national championship, and you fail to deliver, especially with the amount of talent that was on that roster. Granted, Candace Parker did not play that season because she had a swollen knee issue coming out of high school. But still, there was no excuse. There was still a lot of talent that was still on that roster that was able to get to that Final Four. And you choked. You choked. That is still one of the most frustrating losses that Tennessee ever had in its history that I'll never forget. And I feel like also with that particular game, that game set a new kind of switch in Pat Summitt, at least the remaining of her career, that defense and rebounding was going to be her calling card to winning championships and having any other kind of success the rest of the way in her career. And even though it might have put some of Lady Vols Nation to sleep at times, she was very adamant on making sure that this team understood her philosophy on defense, rebounding, and winning in the half court. She was not about to do all this up tempo. I mean, granted, yes, when she won the national championship 39-0, that was an up tempo team. They played full court press, man to man. They played the whole entire court. But there was a switch that went off in Pat Summitt in that Michigan State game that she never swayed away from after, and she just stayed true to what she knew best, and that was defense and rebounding, winning championships. And hey, again, she won 2 more national championships out of it, but was a lot of times a lot of Lady Vols games not as exciting like they used to. Yeah. And that was because I feel like that game played a huge role into, shifting her coaching in the latter stages of her career. But those are the 4. Rate, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Like I said, participate in the poll if you want to. And yeah, I will talk to you all later. Peace for now. Bye.